Hey, everybody. Thank you again for all tuning in to Indigenous Podcast. It's a late night tonight, Saturday night. Thought we'd all create a nice video for you guys. So before we start, I just want to say again, thank you all for tuning in, subscribing, liking the videos, watching our hours of what we talk about. We're really lucky to have you guys on. And to those that are just watching that maybe haven't seen our videos before, welcome. And before I start, again, like Marcus, Crispin, he's been on before, he's a great guest. Wanchaloa, and we got Ramo, who we're going to introduce here in just a few seconds. Wanchaloa, you wanted to maybe add in a couple things?
All right, so let me share screen with you guys. I got a GoFundMe I wanted to share with everybody. So this is from an Inuk Indigenous actress over in Canada. She started this GoFundMe. It's called the What's Next documentary. Let me read her summary real quick for you guys. I donated to this fund. I think it's a great cause. So I'm going to link it in the description. All right. So here goes. My name is Marika, Sila. I am an actress, stunt performer, and Indigenous rights activist. I am raising funds to produce a documentary dedicated to answering this burning question. What's next in regards to all the recent news around the Indian residential schools here in Canada? I will be interviewing Indigenous elders, community leaders, residential school survivors, and the top influencers to get their views on how we can move forward in a good way. If you would like to know how the Indigenous community would like to move forward, please share this video. And if you feel inspired to, donate funds and help make this documentary a reality. Additional funds will go towards buying new sports equipment for the Indigenous youth affected by the wildfires in northern Manitoba. Thank you for everyone who's in support of the Indigenous community and to everyone who is doing what they can to elevate Indigenous voices. Marika, Sila. So yeah, I highly recommend you guys donate to this. I already did it myself. I'll be linking that in the description. So that's all on my end.
Thank you, Angelo, for sharing that. It's a really important cause, and I hope a lot more people can donate and help with this as well. Now, Ramo, it's a pleasure to meet you, my friend. First time meeting, and I hear that you have some really great ideas. For us as Native, Indigenous brothers and sisters out there. But first, yeah, you can tell us a little bit, your name and where you're from. I believe you're of Paraguayan and Mexican descent, so that's really cool. So, give the mic to you.
Awesome. Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm very grateful you guys had me on this show. So yeah, my name is Ramo, and half Mexican and half Paraguayan. I currently live in New York City, and I got a degree in economics.
That's awesome. Yeah. I know you're really a smart guy because from what I hear, like I can't wait to hear what your plan is. So before we go into that plan, now you've been to Paraguay before, and I forgot if it was from Dr. Jack Forbes or someone else when you're talking about Paraguay, and he had brought up as Paraguay as being like a native nation as well, because when I think about South America, I think of most of those countries as clearly being like majority native. Of course, like, there's some are like, mixed native or like, fully native. But when talking about like, Brazil is, a very interesting, country, but mostly like Argentina and Uruguay. I know like both of those countries have like a huge, very big like European population. But with Paraguay, it's an interesting country because it's not like Uruguay. There's actually quite a lot of like native people there, and they speak like it's native language. Guarani is an official language of the country. That's like none of the countries in South America almost. So that's really amazing. So maybe you could tell me a little bit about that. You can speak Guarani as well?
No, unfortunately, I can't. I don't know the language.
Oh yeah.
It's a future project for me.
Yeah, no, definitely. Where in Paraguay? I guess it's the capital that you've been in?
Pretty much. And the outlying skirts, like surrounding towns nearby the capital.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Yeah, that's definitely one of the countries I'd like to see because not much is talked about of Paraguay, But I heard that they are a landlocked country, but they have one of the strongest navies in South America, which is crazy.
Very.
Yeah, and then just I've read the history of Paraguay too, and unfortunately, a lot of governments, that have taken over in the past, like it's issues with indigenous tribes and whatnot, being, forcefully removed, or, issues with genocide going on. So it's really sad. So I hope that, the future for, people of Paraguay can be better. Um, have you seen a lot of activism or heard of some, like people like really standing up for at least, those in rural areas? Um, maybe you've heard the news or maybe not so much, Ramo.
No, not so much. I've seen a couple of clips online, but it's not really heard of. It's a very isolationist nation, and majority of the people who are from there, they really like to keep to themselves. They're not loud like most of other countries around the world. The less you know about them, the better for them. They just have this mentality.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I would say so because I feel like probably I'm gonna say like 90 to 95% of Americans probably don't or have ever heard of like Paraguay or know where Paraguay is. Um,
No.
yeah, I mean to be honest, like I didn't know where Paraguay was when I was like a kid, but I'm always interested in geography. Uh, but yeah, going back though to your economic plan, if you could maybe tell us a little bit about that, because many of us here and who are watching this would love to know a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, so this economic plan, well, a little bit of background to it. I first started thinking about this economic plan, I think in my junior year or sophomore year of college. So I was in one of these intermediate economic courses, and then I started looking into urban economics. So I was thinking, okay, you know what if I come up with this plan? And I don't want to brag, I don't want to come off as braggadocious, but honestly, I haven't seen this method yet in any textbook whatsoever or any economic book. So if there is one out there, I can at least say I arrived at this method or theory independently. Um, but this is what I thought of. Let's say, for example, there's a native community in a certain part of the city, right? And let's say it's poor. Let's say it's a low income neighborhood, but we want to make it better. We want to make it a middle class neighborhood. So what do? We set up shops that are convenient, not just for poor people, but convenient for everybody, poor, middle class, rich people, that they can all shop, that they could go into that poor neighborhood and shop. So what ends up happening here is that money starts flowing. So we start manipulating money, and it starts flowing into that poor neighborhood. So over time, that poor neighborhood starts to become middle class. So the steps that it takes to become middle class, it's very simple, really. And all we have to do is keep the money flowing within our neighborhood. So when money comes outside and into our neighborhood, the people who live in that neighborhood, we have a responsibility to invest in ourselves. Like, let's say me and Crispin live in the same neighborhood. So me and Crispin have to do business with each other to keep the money flowing. So money flows among ourselves and also flows from outside the neighborhood. So this enables that certain area of the city to prosper. And over time, after becoming middle class, it can even become a high income neighborhood, high class neighborhood. But that's a little bit getting ahead of myself. But just to give you an idea of how to manipulate money and how it can impact a certain area of a city. And you can also apply this to a country or a nation.
Oh, that's pretty incredible, man. That's great. That would be definitely something I think that could be applied in the future, for indigenous
Yeah.
people, and and you agree like that we can come together, be unified, and thinking of this plan would really help like a lot of people out there. And I'm sorry I forgot to bring up that you are half Guarani of the tribe,
Yeah.
correct? Yeah, that's really awesome. Because I know in Paraguay that's a lot of Guarani people live there. I think because the official language and whatnot as well. So it's really cool. Juancholo, did you have any thoughts on his plan?
No, I just think it's really interesting. We would obviously have to come up with what businesses would be best, that would fit that model. But I'm sure there's plenty of brainstorming to be done with that. I think it'd be really beneficial, especially in places like Mexico or any other countries that have like indigenous communities that are like very identifiable, and then you could really take that to them. And because I mean, money, like as far as a lot of people don't want to acknowledge it all the time, but money is everything. Money is power. If you have money, you can get a lot of things done. You can change a lot of things.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's where like the part that, I love your plan, Ramo. And we also need to, coming together as one, realizing that we are like, native people. Um, and when we come together, a lot of great things can come out of that. We start looking out for one another. We start realizing that we aren't so different from one another, despite national borders, despite what we're told in the media, despite what others tell us through their divisive ways. We are of one people, despite what others say. Um,
Yeah.
so I do think that your great economic plan, such as yours, can come to fruition within time, and that's really great that you want to do that. Um, and I was curious, we Juanchelo and I do, we're unfortunately like not taught by called by others by like to that we can't be like native people because of like so-called X, Y, and Z. And I've said this in a lot of other videos before, but I was curious on your thoughts of that. Rama, have you ever been like? Has anyone ever said anything to you, or at what point did you, I know you are half Guarani, but did anyone ever say no, you can't be that because you don't look something, or have you encountered that before?
Um, Definitely not from South America. In the United States, I have, and it's from non-native friends on a few occasions. But South America, people are pretty used to seeing mixed people at this point. Um, Whether it's with natives or black or white, it's pretty much at this point a lot of people are mixed, so they're used to it. But all that negativity about me being not native came from non-native friends over here in the States.
Sure. No, definitely. Like, I know Wanchelo and I get a lot of, comments from people also from the US as well, saying that
Yeah,
because we have certain like amounts of like, non-native blood, like you can't be a native person. Like that's really silly.
yeah,
And it's come to a point now where their arguments are so easy to pick apart. Like we already know like the first step, like how to like dismantle these silly just words that come out of their mouths from the
I
first.
always like how they every time they say something like that, they always act like they got you, like like you've never heard this fucking comment ever in your life. Like I've had people like, I swear to God, it used to be the thing that they would attack me with was, oh well, you don't have a tribal community. It's like, oh, I joined one. I know my ancestry, I know my culture, I know my history. I'm part of a tribal community from Mexico. I'm visiting them in September, right? Well, now it doesn't matter that I have a tribe. Now it's, well, you're not 100% pure. And so it's like they always find something to fucking bitch about. But yeah, they act like it's
yeah.
like I never heard that sentence before. Oh, I've never. Oh shit, I'm not 100%. Holy shit, I never thought about that. Like, get the fuck out of here.
Oh yeah, definitely. Crispin, I don't know if we asked you. Has anyone ever confronted you about that, like in the US too?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, nobody from my own people though. The thing that I get the most from my own people, and I understand it's valid, is like, you're clanless. You got to come out and figure out what clan your family was, or get adopted into a clan. And different reservations from out there have talked to me about that. But most, if you're talking about like actual gatekeeping, to where somebody might say, speculate on my ancestry or this and that, that's mostly, if I'm being honest, it's come from other tribes, and it's mostly US tribes, or it's like if it happens with Mexicans, it's usually from mestizos. And I know that these guys get into that whole, you guys get into that thing too, like with like the mestizo concept and the Chicano concept and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's honestly usually some Western tribes, and I'm not like saying all of them do this, but like I've had some, maybe Lakota and Navajo, come at me that way. It's not, I'm not saying that they all do that, but that's mainly who I get it from. And I'll look at them like, you guys are just as mixed as me. Or not the Navajo necessarily, because they are mostly full-blooded, but I've seen some Navajos that were just as light, if not lighter, or they'd have one white parent or something. So it's like, you really can't talk. But like among other Haudenosaunee, yeah, I'm good. You know, if somebody that's Haudenosaunee doesn't like me, usually it'll have to be because of my personality. But nobody's been like, oh, he's not one of us. You know, so like I got friends from just about every one of the 6 nations now that I think about it, except Cayuga and Onondaga so far. But other than that, yeah. So I mean, you know, they always try and hit you with the, whether you want to call it half-breed thing, the mestizo thing, whatever label, or Métis up in Canada, you know, it's stupid.
Yeah. No, I
Is
agree.
it me or just like I've told Marcus, this is probably gonna sound really stupid to you guys, but like when I first hear mestizo, I don't know why, but I think of like some really bad cheap like off-brand like market cheese or something whenever I hear the word mestizo. That's I don't know.
Market cheese. How I think of it as is just like, because when I read up on this word, it was like created by, you know, Spanish conquistadors or criollos, regardless, you know, non-native people
Yeah.
thought of this. So again, it's just like a divisive word, in my opinion, when we're being called that, especially by like others, because they're taught that we shouldn't like say that we're indigenous or native, because they're either taught by the propaganda of Jose Vasconcelos, which Juan Chilo and I are going to talk about in another video, that we should be a part of this, you know, cosmic race, and that we should accept like other parts of who we are, but deny that we're full on native people. So again, like I view that as unfortunate propaganda that we're fed. And again, it's a video, like I said, that Juan Chilo and I will dig a little bit more into. Um, but yeah, I think we could maybe go into some social issues that I know we wanted to talk about, because I know we were talking about like people that want to say that we can't be native, but there's a lot that we've dealt with that, you know, unfortunately are on like the left side of the spectrum, that really want to dig into, no, you know, Hispanic or Latino fits, because you're from a Latin country or you're from a Spanish speaking country. You shouldn't say that you're indigenous or native because you're walking over them or you're trying to speak over them, or I feel like I'm trying to speak over them. So therefore, I'm going to do what I can to not let you talk over them. And I'm going to say, you're not native either. Even though like there's clear people, people that look just like me that want to say that, but you know, I'm not going to say denied, because I'm never going to like accept being denied by some idiot that's going to say that I can't be a native person. But just they try to say that you can't. It's just ridiculous. And I think that with, you know, those that on the left side that do try to do this sort of gatekeeping, it's really dangerous, because they're just feeding more into colonialism, essentially. Like we're the purpose of this channel, and the purpose of many other people and their channels and videos and Instagrams and whatnot, is for us like to come together as one. And I don't think people on the left side realize this, or they're just not thinking when they try to deny us that. They think that they're doing others like a favor, but they're not. Because we want to come together and support one another, you know, eliminate this, you know, self-hate and hate towards like others of like, you know, darker skin, like natives in particular. So I don't know. Did anyone else like have any thoughts about that in general? Like on
I'll
that?
jump in with a point like I've made time and again, and I every single time with this is with people like, you know, this includes native gatekeepers, but I mean, we'll leave that for the live on Tuesday. But for, you know, even the white liberals, it's like they think they're white knights in shining armor protecting all these indigenous communities, and they're like, well, you're speaking over them by saying that you're indigenous, which I don't see how you are. It makes no sense. But they're basically being hypocrites, because they're doing the very thing they're criticizing you of doing. They're saying, well, you shouldn't do it because you're speaking over them, so I'm going to defend indigenous communities. I'm their spokesperson. And it's like, my tribe never made them, you know, our spokesperson. My tribe disagrees with that whole rhetoric. My tribe says you can say you're indigenous, you should reconnect. In fact, my elder gave me the specific mission to recruit more Wachichils. Like my brother Isaac is as a part of that, we're trying to get more people to reconnect with our tribe. So the very fact that you have a white liberal saying, oh, you can't do this or that, it's like, you're getting in my fucking tribe's way. So it's like, so aren't you speaking over us? Like, so you're being a hypocrite as well. I just think it's stupid. It's like, no one gave you the authority to speak on behalf of anybody. So who the fuck are you? So that's my major problem with that too.
I think what people forget also is that Latino isn't a race, you know? So it's because when people like, here's the thing, like people will be like, oh yeah, like I'm half Latino, half Asian, or half Chinese. Like what the heck is, well, Latino can mean many things, you know? Or to say that like I'm half Hispanic, half Black. Okay, well, what is Hispanic then? And then they'll just be like, well, and then it's just like a blank stare, you know? And this is what, and I said this in another video, is I thought about this at an early age. Like I thought that I was a Hispanic person or a Latino person. And then like the more I learned about, this culture and just people that I'd seen in the media and in movies and everything, I realized that, wait, so I am the same person as the European Latino too. And I was like, no, this doesn't make any sense. Again, it takes soul searching, and you have to find out like who you really are. And of course, like we're never denying someone of saying like, no, like you can't embrace like other parts of who you are. But like in my perspective, in my view, like I saw nothing in common with the, European, Spanish, Latino, the African Latino or Asian, Asian Latino. So I found more common ground with others when I say that, I am a Native person. So yeah, it's hard. And I think that the media also feeds into this as well. And it's worse when it gets down into like Central and South American media where they, I don't know. I think Ramo, in Paraguay, now, did you live there for some time or you've just been there and visited?
No, I just visited there for like a month.
Visited there for a month, yeah. Did you see a lot of, did you notice like division or like, social issues between class and people of different, ethnic groups?
I barely saw the division. I don't think a month would. I don't think I can speak on it. I've been there for a month, but the few of it that I ended up seeing was based on social class. It wasn't based on race or color. It was just class, whether you're a poor person, middle class, or a rich person.
Sure.
But I think I would have to stay there longer to give a better answer for that.
No, of course. Yeah, no problem.
Well,
yeah,
I was going to ask you, Ramo. Oh, my bad, Mark. I was just curious, Ramo. Did you grow up like knowing you were Indigenous, or did you like also buy into like the Latino Hispanic thing? Or?
Oh no, I think I was like everybody else. Like I bought into the whole Hispanic and Latino thing. I think I realized that when I was 20 or 19, I realized I came to that whole Indigenous epiphany.
Yeah, seems like we all went down that path. Well, maybe not Crispin.
Yeah, not Crispin. Crispin knew, bro. Crispin knew since he was a little kid.
Yeah. So it's interesting how us like Southern descent,
But I
Native
wasn't
people-
always traditional. I got to point that out. And I wouldn't even say I'm not really now, but I'm just saying, like, if you'd met me 10 years ago, you would have thought I was a fucking idiot. So I'm not that far, but I'm not that far ahead, if that's what you're trying to say, So.
Yeah, no, you're good. We all come from different, paths and finding out more like about ourselves, which is why I love like group, calls and like podcasts and everything like this, because we're all able to like to relate to something really important. And we all have a similar goal, and it's like helping out others and seeing what we can do for other people. Because I was telling Juan Chaloa last night that I got this really great message from someone who said that like thank you so much for like your videos and whatnot and helping me finding out more about myself. And I was like, gosh, it feels so good to like see things like that, but yeah, going back to social issues and whatnot currently right now, I think we cover a little bit of news for us Native people. The Olmec head was erased off of was it a mural in Galveston, Texas? I think.
We had the petition on our live, so I mean, you know, to all our supporters, thank you for signing that petition. I didn't really believe it. Like when somebody commented and they're like, yeah, they actually removed it. I was like, for real? It's like I didn't think they would listen. You know, so
They did listen, and it was finally like gone. So I was really happy about that. I think I wanted to like cover a certain, you know, politically correct issue about that, which was like, and this is what I heard from someone's live last night, is that there were a lot of like Native, you know, Indigenous people that were, I don't want to say like afraid, but didn't want to address the issue because they didn't want to be like called out as like racist or something like that.
yeah. What do you guys think about that?
I'll say that.
Um,
Oh, sorry.
no, it's fine. I'll be the last one.
No, I was just going to say, like, we're at a certain point with more people reconnecting that we can't like wait and afraid to be PC. Like, we have to be adamant like about these sorts of issues because if we aren't, more stupid things are going to come. Like, if more things like the Olmec problem with, you know, the Abocentric people, all this craziness. So things like this have to be, you know, addressed immediately. Can't just wait around or be afraid. Like, I'm not afraid of addressing these issues. I'm not, and it's not racist. I'm just calling this, you know, crap out and how it is. I think more people need to be like that too, or else we're never gonna like get anywhere. Those are my 2 points.
I was just gonna throw in there like my personal definition of racism is hatred for another race based off their skin color. You know, that I hold to that traditional definition. But I think it's kind of funny because you'll see people on the left that'll say that because we criticize the Abocentric movement or the Olmec thing, all that we're being racist. But it's like the left themselves says that the only people that can be racist is white people. So how can we be racist according to their own definition? I'm just throwing that out there. Like, you know, it seems like they're inconsistent when it suits them.
I've gotten racism, so much like racism from people that are not white. Then I'm not going to talk about it. But I just think that that's always ridiculous to say.
Yeah. I know my, I mean, I'm not going to go into depth, but I know my uncle, he was a firefighter down here in Alabama in Birmingham. And he said he faced a lot of racism from Black people. Again, so it is possible. I mean, in my opinion, again, all that is required is hatred based off a skin color. That's all that's required. Anybody can be hateful. Anybody can be racist.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I think, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm good. Chris, what were you going to say?
That's kind of the thing that I was alluding to earlier about changing the definitions, because now the left has it. And I've seen some of our own people regurgitate this bullshit too, to where like, all right, I'm going to step on some toes here, but I don't care. The Mexica movement were some of these people that were like, oh yeah, they can't be racist and there's no such thing as Black supremacy because Black supremacy and white supremacy can't exist at the same time and blah, blah, blah. And why that's ignorant is because, look, there's already a definition of Black supremacy. You can look it up on Google. It's not made up. There are groups like the Nation of Islam, the Hebrew Israelites, the Moorish Science Temple who say all this pseudo-scientific bullshit. And then, so like with the Olmec thing, the mural that just came down, I have a little bit of inside information about that too. Apparently the guy that took it down, that was the one that painted it, see, he was very arrogant towards natives who were calling him out about that. And he was basically trying to say, I think it was in one of the other petitions, because there's another mural in Inglewood, California, near Inglewood, and they're trying to get that taken down too, because it's appropriation no matter where you stand. But basically the Black and brown unity natives are never going to hold them accountable. I'm just going to say that out there. And I'm not saying you have to be anti-Black to agree with what I'm saying, but what I am saying is Native unity should be our priority. You can't walk before you crawl and you can't run before you walk. So my thing is, you know, there was people threatening to basically do harm to those who were among those who signed those petitions to get it taken down. And the guy that painted it tried to say that he got death threats, and he didn't show any evidence of what he was saying. So until he shows evidence that he got death threats, we could say it's bullshit for now, because the burden of proof is on him. But we've got actual screenshots of people saying how they're going to knock us off and, oh, fuck all you mestizos and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you know what? I'm one of those people that signed that petition, and I'm right here. It's actually funny that this ass clown from Texas, he's a black dude who said that he's indigenous, and he's got a Confederate flag like as his profile picture. You can't make this shit up. But you're going to tell me that they're not racist? I mean, the definition of racism, like the left takes issue with it because it says that anyone can be racist. And like with what Juan was alluding to, the problem with that is, like, they say, oh, I can't be racist because racism is power plus prejudice, institutional power, etc. The problem is we already have a term for institutional racism. It's called institutional racism. And when you say, oh, I can't be racist, just prejudice, well, prejudice doesn't specify race. You can be prejudiced against Muslims, you can be prejudiced against women, you can be prejudiced against men. So that's like saying, you know, I can't drink juice. I can extract the vitamin E goodness from the juices, but I can't drink juice. You know, that's what they sound like.
One thing I was gonna say, Crispin, is I really like your stances on social media where you put natives first. I think that's what we all need to do. We're natives. We need to put ourselves first. We matter first because we're us. We're us. So we shouldn't be putting another race of people above us in terms, I mean, sure, help other people that need help, right? But not above our own well-being. Our people are oppressed. Our people have very strong issues that we need to resolve. It's like we need to put ourselves first. And that's what this podcast is devoted to. Because in the past, me and Marcus have also gotten that, like, oh, well, you don't talk about like Afro Latinos or all this other crap. It's like, yeah, well, this channel's not for them. This channel's only for Indigenous. That's it.
Right. And it's like, I'm sure you've got no problem at all having an Indigenous person that's mixed with African on. It's just that you're not putting non-Indigenous blood on a pedestal. You're not doing the BIPOC, Afro Latino, blah, blah, blah. Just like I wouldn't want you to give any credence whatsoever toward my Irish side. I don't want you to do that. I wouldn't want you to do that to any Criollo blood you may have. So it's like, why the fuck should we pander? Everybody else, like you look at other communities that are not white, Black people put their community first for the most part, especially when it comes to organizing. Asians, same thing, stop Asian hate. So why are we still like, we are the world hippies? I don't get it.
Right. And we have had, a native that's, mixed with Black. Alexander Woodenside, he's a Lakota. Yeah. He's been on here and he says, I'm Lakota. That's it. He says you can't be two things. So he disagrees even with the Afro-Indigenous term, which and so does Phoenix, who isn't a fellow Apache, I know, but I agree with it too. It's like if we're gonna say you don't be mestizo, embrace being an Indigenous person, right? Embrace that identity, right? If you really want to go full scale. Yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, you're either Indigenous or you're not. Like that's how I think it should be. Like, and if you don't want to be Indigenous, that's fine. You don't have to say you're Indigenous, right? But I just think it should be one or the other, kind of like how like Alexander Woodenside was saying, he doesn't prioritize his other ancestry. It's just the Lakota side that's important to him.
Right. And like an example of this I could give you from Haudenosaunee culture specifically, but I'm sure every other culture has some concept of this in some way. So the first treaty we ever made with the white man was with the Dutch, and it was known as the two-row wampum. I actually posted a picture of it earlier. I don't know if you guys saw it yet, but it's what the original treaty wampum looks like from the 1600s, where we basically made it an alliance with the Dutch. And what the two-row wampum emphasizes is that we can live as brothers, but we live in our canoes, the white people and all other non-natives, frankly, because they all got here on ships like the first wave of immigrants, be it unwilling through slavery or willing through, just immigration. Anyway, I digress. We believe that your ways are supposed to be Haudenosaunee or whatever your tribe is, and then they stay in their ships, we stay in their canoes. If you try to walk between both ways, you drown. That's pretty much that for me is all the reason I need to not, you know, identify with anything else. That doesn't mean I don't love my mother. Of course I love my mother, but she's the only one who gave birth to me, you know, so I'm not gonna sit there and be like, yeah, I'm a proud Irishman, you know. I'm not a dark-skinned native, but I'm too dark for that. So they don't even accept like white-skinned Irish people in America who go back as Irish. So what the fuck are they gonna say to me, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an issue that has been going on, and I've actually spoken against since, well, even before, a little bit before I met Kristen. I noticed that a lot of natives who are liberal or leaning towards the left, they adamantly defend Black supremacists, even at the expense of their own reputation. It could either be through fear, or it could be because they want to win some liberal brownie points. Who knows? But yeah, it's just a trend that's been going on for a long time, and it's got to stop, because what we're doing right now, we're just patching it up, just putting tape over these wounds. It's like nothing's gonna heal this way. We have to come out with the truth and say things the way they are, because the more we try to hide the truth, one day it's just gonna blow up, and it's gonna get out of control. Like something really bad is gonna happen if we just keep patching things up the way we are doing it right now.
I agree. Good point, Ramo. And I think another thing about that we also need to address regarding, you know, certain points on the left is the media itself, where
Yeah.
they never like look what I mean, you can see from the missing children to, you know, all the other indigenous issues that have gone on in Canada and the United States. It's not covered, but they cover a lot of other issues regarding other different groups of people. But I feel that, and this is my opinion, that a lot of our issues are, you know, what do they call it? Brushed under the rug or something, you know, just swept under the rug. And then that's the last thing we heard of it.
Right. I mean, where's the leftist outrage for all our issues? Where's the leftist outrage for all those slain children up in Canada, the residential schools? I don't see. I mean, I saw outrage, but only from natives. I didn't see it from CNN. I didn't see it from Fox News. I didn't see it from all these other like news outlets. You know, for an atrocity that's horrible. That's such an atrocity that it doesn't even matter if you're right or left in terms of like the news agency. I mean, you would want to cover it and decry it, right? But I don't see it happening. Like so. Right. Yeah, I'm just sick of our people being put on the back burner. We like they act like we just don't exist. They don't want to talk about it, anything. And you know, the moment we try to defend ourselves, we're suddenly the villains. We're suddenly anti-black. We're suddenly this or that. Like we're evil now. All of a sudden, it's complete baloney. It's stupidity.
But you do know why it's not mentioned in the media, right? You do know why it doesn't get as much coverage.
No, or elaborate. Well, tell me why.
Well. Think of it this way: you're the most powerful country in the world, and you want to maintain that power, but you see it slipping away because other nations are becoming first world countries, or even more powerful than they were before. So the last thing you want is, I'm not saying have a rebellion, but the last thing you want is more drama within your territories. So your best bet is to just hide it under the rug, or not cover it as much as possible. So the only way this can be covered, well, this is what I think, and maybe Crispin might not like the idea, because we talked about this a number of times. If we ever come to have a Native president, or a lot of Native people who are in Congress, then maybe things might get turned around for the better.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I was just gonna say, like, just I mean, it's definitely believable, but I mean, just like think about the implication, though. Like, you know, the government, if they are doing this, you know, telling these news agencies to suppress like the truth. I mean, that's a pretty chilling thing to do.
Yeah, very.
I think, believe it or not, Ramo, I actually do. I've come around to it more. It's just that I don't want to see our people back in a Democratic president, and I don't think a Republican I mean, our only way in is probably third party, and that's honestly hard to get into. But who else is going to be? Who else is going to represent properly? I mean, if it was somebody like that woman, Deb Haaland, or who Biden appointed, someone like her, I could see myself backing her up. But the problem is, you got so many chiefs that are crooked, and it's just you don't want to have a crooked president. If a lot of us can't even keep the tribal councils and traditional government from being corrupt, then how are we going to do that at the highest level of office in this country? I'm not saying we can't do it, but where I was coming at it before when I was talking to you about this and I was against it, I was thinking, but see, this person's got to put everybody's needs, the whole country, not just ours. And there's things that are more dire for us. So that's kind of the only thing I was thinking about. But honestly, I know we gotta take power from within rather than the other way, because we're gonna be the majority. I mean, we have the buying power to also do a lot of what you talked about with the middle class thing. I need to look up the statistics on it again, but natives have, both northern and southern, have a lot of buying power, and we got to lobby for ourselves too. So I'm more on board with what you're saying now than you think.
Yeah, lobbying groups have a lot of power. Like money speaks. Money gets politicians to vote certain ways. So yes, good idea.
I was curious, Ramo, what you were saying about, like, you see a lot of good things coming, if we were to, like, if things were to change. So I'm curious, what things would you like to see be changed? You just mean like land,
in terms of
tree? Sorry.
no, I was going to ask, like, in terms of politics, economics, or social wise.
Politics and social wise. I think social politics are just like things such as, like, were you referring to like land treaties being restored? Just a lot more coverage on certain issues, or were there some other things that you were going to say?
Yeah. So, well, for land treaties, this is just my opinion. To be honest, I don't think they will all be promised. Maybe some nations might see their land treaties be restored, but I don't think everyone's going to get the same treatment. I think for this country, for now, since it's mostly being controlled by white people, I think the ones in power will restore it back to the nations that they deem would be beneficial for them. That, okay, what can this nation offer me? Okay, can they empower my next campaign, my next political campaign? Or can they empower the country? What can they offer? Their economic resources, stuff like that. So I mostly think smaller nations might not come to ever see that. And over time, I think they might integrate themselves into a bigger nation. Social-wise, I'm kind of positive, but only if we come together and if we unite. And what I mean by that is that we're so split up nowadays. There are some conservative natives who voted for Trump, and I got no problem with that, to be honest. You can vote for anybody, whether Biden or Trump, doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, everyone has their own reason why they vote for their politician. But we have to keep in mind that we have to put our race first before politics or religion or anybody else. And that's something that a lot of our people are missing here, whether it's liberal or conservatives, because I see this on social media all the time. Liberal and conservative natives are fighting each other. They're just arguing back and forth. Oh, you voted for Trump, you're a racist. Or you voted for Biden, oh, you must be a black bootleg, or et cetera, or you're a libtard, stuff like that. So whether you're a liberal or a conservative, it's good if you belong to a certain political spectrum, but it becomes a bad thing if you go to the extreme. Too much of anything becomes a bad thing. So you have to keep it in moderation. If you want to be liberal, okay, go right ahead, but don't take it to the extreme and start to overdo it, like political correctness, for example, or cancel culture, stuff like that. That just becomes very toxic, and that's an example of becoming extreme. Or if you're going to be a conservative, that's fine too, but don't be too much of a religious fanatic, or don't be too much of a not necessarily racist, but don't be too much of a fascist. Have pride for your nation, but not too much, because too much of anything is just unhealthy. Just keep everything in moderation is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, I love that. Those are great points, man. I completely agree. Like, especially the infighting. Like, Juan Chilo and I, a lot of some of our arguments, or at least maybe half of them, have been with other, native people. And I like debate. I enjoy it. But when it keeps on going on and on, it just keeps on getting more heated. I'm just at a point where I'm like, this is what, the original, those that, were here to divide us, the Spanish conquistadors and like others, uh, their plan is still working when we still like continue to spread the hate and keep on yelling over each other and like saying these terrible things to each other. So the end goal is to make sure that we, as Native people are, looking out for each other and not, yelling down each other's throats, because at the end, we all want the same thing. And that's like us coming together and doing great things, you know? So when I completely agree with you, Ramo. That's great, man. Like, and I think definitely like the politics does like separate us. Like, no, not everyone that's like not with Trump and whatnot. Not everyone's racist that like voted for Donald Trump. Like everyone has their
Yeah,
reason for voting for Donald Trump. It's not like, and then like you could
yeah,
say the same thing with like Biden too, and whatnot as well. We all like have our reasons, and that's the thing with Juan Chaloa and I is that we're moderate people, and we bring on people with like their own political like perspectives, but we're not here to like be like, oh, you voted for Trump, I'm not going to talk to you again, or like, oh, you voted
yeah,
for Hillary or Biden, so you must like, oh, I don't know, be a socialist or whatever. um,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's
So
horrible. Like, what happened? Like, maybe I might have been a kid, but you know better. Maybe you might tell me. But I'm pretty sure in the '90s, growing up, I was because I have family from both sides, both Republican and Democrats.
mhm.
They would debate, but nobody would tell each other, "Hey, if you voted for Clinton or if you voted for the other guy." I can't remember who ran against Clinton, but if you voted for Clinton, I'm not talking to you ever again. I do not remember seeing that kind of stuff in the '90s or in the 2000s. So what happened in the last decade? It's something that's just plaguing everybody now.
It's the direction of what social media, the bigwigs in
Yeah,
charge and like the directors of certain like news outlets have decided to go, like, where if you vote for this person, you're probably like a racist or some like uber liberal idiot. And you've got tons of like political propaganda on YouTube. You've got far right like extremists, like conspiracy theorists that go around. You-
QAnon.
huh?
QAnon.
QAnon. Oh, QAnon. I won't go down that rabbit hole, Crispin.
yeah,
I see what you're trying to do. No. But yeah, QAnon, you've got like a lot of, media on the left. Like, I'll call out like, certain things like that BuzzFeed like even promotes as well, or like there's this other uber liberal like social media. What is it called? I forgot, it was on Facebook. It was some group that I followed, and all they did was just like post like anti-Trump stuff all the time, and like all these like left-leaning points. And then there was like a certain time where I was like, what the heck am I watching? Like, this is too extreme. I'm out of here. Um,
yeah,
so again, like it affects like the younger generations. Like you have Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. So now you have all these kids and all of these like younger adults that are consuming what they follow, but what they want to hear and listen to. But unfortunately, a lot of what they're hearing are like really big extremist talking points from one side or the other. And that creates a lot of division in the future. Like, oh, it's bad, man. Like I worry for like the younger generations coming up, to be honest with you. Um, but
yeah,
it does seem that a lot of the younger generation does is like leaning like left, but I do see like a lot of moderates as well. And you know, for me, like, you know, I was like a really, not many people might not know this, but I was like a really left leaning person, you know, in my undergraduate years. And then as I went through like
Yeah.
my graduate school, and like I saw like things from both, you know, both perspectives. And then slowly my views like shifted to like more so like in the middle of things now. Because just like the things that
Yeah.
I've seen from, you know, social media, I see the things that like news outlets hide to make sure that they get their points across. And it's really bad because a lot of people watch that and they're fed, you know, lies. Um, and I could say that about both, you know, right and left media. Um, so it's hard. I think that more honest media and more honest reporters need to come out and make these points clear, and not like spread propaganda and lies. But, you know, it's whatever gets ratings for them, you know?
Yeah.
That's why they love, like, a lot of like outlets love to spread like hate and fear because it gets people's attention, you know? And unfortunately, native issues isn't gonna, they believe isn't gonna get anyone's attention, especially like indigenous people's issues. Like they want the things that spread hate and fear, because in
Yeah.
the end, it's all about ratings for them.
Yeah, when you were saying that you were left leaning in your colleges, I can relate to that. I don't know if Crispin and Juan went through the same journey as me, because I was very left leaning, even far right. Like I used to be a communist, believe it or not. I used to love
What?
communism, and then I started taking economics
You've been
classes,
holding out on me,
and I
bro.
realized, huh?
You've been
What?
holding out on me, bro. You would bash commies all the time. I didn't.
But yeah, I started taking economics courses, and then I realized for the first time how flawed it is. It's not gonna work out in the long run. Yeah, sure. I mean, in the short term, you might see results. You might see a heck of a lot of good results in the short term, but long term, in a few decades, it's not gonna last. That prosperity just doesn't last anymore. And as I got older, I started leaning more towards the middle, just like you said.
Yeah, like you
I mean,
should,
I don't know if
man.
Crispin or you, Juan, can relate to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I was like I guess my freshman or sophomore year of college, I was pretty left. Like I'd watch the Young Turks every day and shit like that.
Young Turks.
But no, I don't know. It's just that you can't just take everybody's word for it. Like there's always a nuance to every issue. Um, like I'm not trying to detract too much, but like I mean I serve in the reserves, you know, with the army. Like, you know, a lot of soldiers are good people, like, but you know, you'll have people on the left that want to paint all soldiers are evil or this or that. And it's like, that's really intellectually dishonest. That's really, whenever your viewpoint is all of this group is evil and horrible and scumbags, like you're not credible. You're just spouting bullshit, in my opinion. So there's so much nuance.
Yeah.
There's so much shades of gray in real life. We live in real life. We don't live in fantasy land, you know? So that's one thing I came to see. You know, that's a major flaw with the left. I mean, also with the right. You know, they'll do the same thing. Although I see it a lot more with the left. Well, they'll just think about that with police officers or
Yeah.
with soldiers or people like that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It definitely, I don't know, like I feel like we're fed something at like younger ages where we're meant to think like in this I mean, like with you, Anchelo, and I, and you know, Ramo too, that we're like in this left leaning stage, but like when we open our eyes and we see the bigger picture, we become more like moderate thinkers. And I'm glad I took this, you know, direction, um, because who knows, like maybe I would also say that like other groups of people can't be, you know, racist. And God, because I watched this trailer, I'm not going to name the movie, where they said, you know, this group of people can't be racist because they've never been in charge of a racist system or something. I was like, no, that is not how racism works, unfortunately. Um, so, and again, I mean, I view that as like a very like, you know, far left talking point, in my opinion. And maybe that's something I would have supported back then. So I'm glad that, I was able to open my eyes up more. And, I'm not, this isn't like a left bashing video per se, but just going over things because we have to call out what we see, and there's clear issues
Right.
on the left side that we notice, especially like I said, in news outlets, not covering native issues, doing things for ratings, um, going too PC. And I think that being too politically correct just destabilizes movements
Yeah.
that are meant to be for a good cause, because then we're afraid to, again, like stepping on toes, or we don't do anything at all, and then we just sit there and debate, should I do this or should I not? And I'm the person that likes to move, I'm the type of person that likes to move forward. So I'm sorry, but like, again, like, and I've said this, like, we got to, if we hurt someone's feelings, like, I'm sorry, but the majority of people agree with us. Like, we can talk about it if you want, but we say what we have to
Yeah.
say. And I think we're all good people here. Like, we're never like, intentionally trying to like be mean to anyone, but we all are here for a reason, and we all have like one goal, like goals in common, and it's for a better future for indigenous people, and just people in general, like people that support us as well, like non-native people. Like, we we want to do good, but we can't let our feelings, these political feelings, like dictate the actions that we take. These extreme political feelings, we have to set them aside if we're going to like get to where we want to be. And I'm talking about like the very far left or just very far right leaning feelings. We have to all come in common ground and see expose problems. And if it's calling things out, then so be it. You know, we can't make everyone happy, but again, like, I think a lot of people agree with what we have to say. I hope that all made sense. It's very late.
Make perfect sense.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. But I got my coffee here. We're good. But Ram, I had a question for you. And that was like, us coming together like through Native unity. What division do you see? And I know you talked about like conservative, like um, Democrats, liberals uh, in the United States. Now, what issues would you say that you see, and maybe as an outsider looking in Central and like South America, would you see that really divides us? Because I think because we're in the United States, it's weird, how like these majority like native nations, there's a huge like amount of division because
Yeah.
again, we're taught that we're different because of our certain culture, therefore we don't want to how would I say, like, associate with certain
Yeah.
people. But here in the United States, like, we have movements like this, and I'm not saying there are movements like that in Central and South America, but we're able to like bring a lot of people together from certain walks of life. So what would you say you see as far as like division from the other side of the border, if you did see any, of course?
So the other side of the border, it's not so much political issues like we have here. It's more of economic issues. So let's not go too far. Um, U.S.-backed fascist governments you might have heard about in Latin America, where the U.S. intervened. They would back fascist presidents and whatnot because they feared communism back then when the USSR was still alive. So stuff like that is just, I don't really want to antagonize the people who joined socialist movements. I could see why in their time of need, socialism spoke to them. Unfortunately, socialism can only work in a small community. Once it's a large community, people lose that sense uh, of the common good for everyone. They start developing individualism. So I think capitalism or a free market economy becomes better for a larger community. But going back to the whole thing with the division in South America, it's pretty much economic based. It's class warfare. Um, it's the United States using Latin America as their playground, as a little chessboard or experiment
Yeah.
on what they would use for other future nations in Africa or Asia.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I've seen the United States government, you know, from documentaries that I've read, they support like the fastest like dictators in El Salvador, a lot in Central America, Guatemala. They supported Rios Montt, who was in charge of the genocide of the Mayan people. I believe around 200,000 people
Yeah.
died from that. He supported the dictatorship, like I said, in El Salvador, and I'm sure like others in Honduras and probably Nicaragua as well. And, you know, they call it like because they don't want to see communism rise, but I think there's more to that as well. You know, like
Yeah.
I'm sure it's like, you know, they don't want to see those what they see as like peasants, because these civil wars started because like majority, like, you know, indigenous people wanted to rise up against these governments, because they wanted fair and equal treatment, you know, and they weren't getting it.
Yeah.
So when you piss off a lot of people, they're going to rise up. And so the United
Right.
States, unfortunately, partnered with the wrong side, in my opinion, um, and decided that it was okay to, you know, give weapons and guns and all these, you know, train all these soldiers to kill off, you know, these native people. And they called it, you know, communism. So it's it seems.
Something something that the media doesn't like, or I don't know why, for what reason they don't touch a lot, is that natives have killed each other in Latin America. So it's not as so much as peasant natives. Yeah, majority of the wealthy classes in Latin America are mostly of white descent, but there are some wealthy natives too in Latin America. They're not very hard to miss. They're kind of common down south. So it's pretty much natives killing each other, natives from middle class killing peasant natives, and it's been an ongoing conflict, and it's not so different from what happened in the United States with Civil War, Revolutionary War.
Oh yeah, you're definitely right. Like I know that there are, you know, natives that were fighting on both sides. You know, unfortunately, and you know, it even goes back all the way to like colonialism. Um, because if it wasn't for like, you know, Clutch Collins and like other natives that, you know, agreed with fighting for the Spanish, the colonialism would have never happened. Um, although I do wonder what a world would be like without like, I don't know if natives would
Yeah,
have stuck together. But yeah, man, like a lot of foreign interference, and not I mean, you see the results of that. Like look at Guatemala and, you know, El Salvador and Honduras today. Like you've got a few of like the most dangerous countries in the world. And what has the United States done to help that? I mean, they created this mess, them and like the dictators that just made things more terrible. And of course, when you add colonialism on top of that, like it's a recipe for disaster. Um, and you know, it's just that the U.S. government. I could go on and on about them, but a lot of them are just not good people, in my opinion, and they don't look out for the rights of the American people and of those of poor, like, you know, refugees as well, and those in any nation in Central America. I mean, it's clear what side they took. They took the
yeah,
the
very.
dictator side. So you know what a majority of those people, what their feelings are and their thoughts are of like poor, you know, indigenous folks, native folks. Like they stick with the rich, you know, usually mostly the Criollo side. Um,
Yeah,
but to change something like that, that would be quite hard. So, and I'm not talking
very.
about like, you know, any like physical military anything like that, any issues regarding that, but just like changing the way the government like handles situations. I mean, again, like how Wanchaloa, or how I've told Wanchaloa, is that you have to get so many people on board with thinking the same way as far as like unifying. And then once we have enough people and we really see like the fruits of our hard work, of our hard labor come in, that's when you can start inserting people in to political positions who have our similar thoughts. And it's not hard. Like in the United States, what there's about, well, again, you know, demographics and who's, you know, native and who's not. But it says that the so-called, Hispanic population has like what, 61 million people, 62 million people. So if we try to guess how many people are of native, descent, and those that would really want to home in on agreeing that, native unity is good and we can look out for one another, there's a good chance that we could, make a difference in the political world, of the United States, inserting people of our views in political positions. And I don't see these views as extreme, or else we wouldn't have people on here that are non-native. They call us, Juan Chilo and I have never been called extremist or anything. So we have a good reason for this podcast. We have good reasons for coming together. Now it's just lighting this on fire more, getting more people's attention. But of course, we have obstacles on the way. We have people that are unfortunately, and like Juan Chilo said, we'll have our live coming up on Tuesday, which, you guys are more than welcome to check out or join. We have people from other, native tribes that like to deny us, so-called mestizos from connecting to our native roots, or they want us to take many, 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 many steps before we say that we're native. And I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, but I want to do what I can now. I'm not going to take all these steps and wait years and decades. Like, we have people that are dying, losing their land. You saw what happened in Canada. Do we want that to continue, or do you want to come together and make a difference? Like, I don't have time to, play freaking wait until goddamn who knows when. Like, I want change. And unfortunately, you're in the way. So either one, we can come to an agreement, or we're just going to move on. That's how it is. And that's how we have to be with these people, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And then you have others too. Like, and we talked about people on the left. But again, like, most people that are on, like, that you would say that they're left leaning, agree with our stance. Like, we have people from both political sides of the spectrum that agree with what we say. But again, Juan Chilo and I, this video was meant to highlight some things that people that on the left side that do disagree with what we have to say, unfortunately. And that's just a few people that we brought up, a few issues that we've talked about. And then, of course, like, what else? It's just the hesitation, I think, from those people that are native that want to say that, like, no, I don't want to step on the rights or speak up, speak over others. And that's not our intention at all. In fact, we want to highlight those people's voices, because again, it's power in numbers, and putting those people of indigenous tribes at the forefront of this. Like, we have, Lakota guy, for example, Alexander Wounded Side, and many others as well. So yeah, I think I talked a lot. But that's what we want to do. But again, it's steps. But we know, what we have to accomplish, and I'm happy with the direction that we've taken so far. And I look forward to a positive, future. Anyone have anything they wanted to add so I can shut up?
I might have something I wanted to remind Ramo of, because we talked about this before. You remember how we were saying how overly politically correct our generation as millennials are?
Sure.
So you and me, we're early 90s millennials, so that doesn't really apply to us. Like, in a lot of ways, we're culturally more, I don't know, like Gen X, like culturally, we do think more like they do, we're snowflakes. But you had said to me before that you think you see a change maybe with Generation Z waking up. No, I hadn't necessarily noticed
Definitely.
that. I remembered you said that. Would you mind, like, elaborating that, if you could, on how you see that, or how it is where you're at? Or
Yeah, so I mean, of course, you might see some Generation Z people being liberal, but I've noticed a trend going on here that a lot of Generation Z people are more conservative than liberal. It's like the complete opposite of millennials from our generation, from me and Crispin's generation. I think it's the fact that their parents are mostly from the 1980s, and the 80s was mostly conservative decade. because of Reagan. So I think since most of their parents are from the 1980s, the Generation Z people are pretty much being taught by conservative parents, whereas mostly millennials came from parents from the 1970s or early 80s. The 70s and the 60s were, both decades were super liberal. Like sex was like having breakfast pretty much back then. That's how liberal it was. So just to give people some kind of perspective, I think it's a trend that's never going to go away. It's going to continue on. First generation is going to be liberal, the second conservative, and it's going to go back and forth. So kids are always going to have either the opposite of the parent generation, or they might have the same, depending on how much the influence or how strong the influence was during that decade.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I noticed a trend as well. Like the millennials are like very liberal, but the upcoming generation is actually more moderate, which is good
Yeah,
because then maybe we can have more honest politics out there, and we can look at things with more of an open mind. I think, from both sides of the spectrum again, because that's what is important. That's what matters, and that's how we make progress. Like, unfortunately, for a lot of people, it's like you pick one side or the other, and if they're a Republican, then probably shouldn't be friends with them, and if they're Democrat, then probably shouldn't be friends with them either. From one side. So I think when we look at it from a modern perspective, we can all agree on things a little bit more easier, and we can point out like the extreme, political BS from both sides, you know, whether it's right or left.
exactly.
Um, but I do feel that there's just things on the left that I really, really disagree with. But there's also things on the right that I can't agree with as well. So, um,
Yeah.
and it's because of what's been going on in society. Like things are just like silly. We're afraid to like say things or speak up. And if we speak up, then we're seen as like again, as a racist or an extremist or something of that matter. And I think it's really important that we listen to other people's words, because if we just like tune them out or just immediately call them out and say like these things, and it's just going to create more division. And that's really bad when you're insulting like people that are on the moderate side, because more Americans are becoming moderate people, in my opinion, because they're just fed up with both sides, especially I think those that that were on the left, such as myself. So I think that we need to be more willing to hear people's opinions, because if we aren't, that's just going to create more division. I think a lot of people that voted for Trump were very moderate people, but they're just pushed to a certain breaking point where they're like, no, like I can't agree with certain things on the other political side, so I'm going to vote for Trump. And that's how 2016 kind of happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we need to all, give each other some space to explain like our points of view. And again, that's why we love having people, on. So yeah, Wanchaloa, did you want to add anything, or were you?
Oh no, you covered it.
Yeah, I think I kind of nailed it pretty much for the most part. But yeah, well, did you want to add anything else, my new friend?
No,
You're good, Crispin?
So I might say one thing, just going back to what you were saying about and I'm gonna actually touch up on 2 points that we addressed a little bit earlier, but one of the things you mentioned on here. So like the first thing is just tying into the whole communism thing and like the wars in Central America. The only reason you have all these people coming from Central America, most of them indigenous, is because of these wars in the 80s. And it's like the idea was we stop the spread of communism, right?
Mm.
But countries like Guatemala and Nicaragua and the other one, El Salvador, yeah, so those countries, they pretty much, I think all the countries, the rebels won, and they were the ones that they say were communist. And then it's kind of like almost a mirror, but the polar opposite with the Vietnam situation, because in Vietnam, the United States lost and the South lost and Vietnam won, but communism didn't spread throughout Southeast Asia. And I wouldn't necessarily say that it spread in Central America either. I mean, these countries just kind of beat the governments eventually, but took heavy losses. But now it's like they're in the state that they're in. And honestly, socialism, you see that more in South America than you do in Central America, from where it looks to me. You got leaders like Evo Morales, or I don't really have a problem with him per se, but then again, you got people like Hugo Chavez in the past. So it's like, it's a mixed bag. And I wanted to touch up briefly on like the thing that you were saying about how a lot of people, well, what Lakota guy said, people were scared to stand up. There's this TikToker named Modern Warrior, and he's got a lot of people pissed off at him, myself included, because it's like he walked back what he was saying on the Olmec thing. And he was like, oh yeah, I got called out for my anti-blackness and blah, blah, blah. And like his sister called him out. And it's like, again, you don't have to be anti-black to stand up for your people. And there's nothing, it's like when you actually say that, you're taking away from real racial crime against whoever, or, you know, real prejudice, when you're just sitting there trivializing it, saying, oh, you're defending the Olmecs as being indigenous, even though there's DNA evidence that shows that they were related to the four of us more than anybody else. I mean, they weren't related to anybody else at all. So it's like you said, you got to be animate. And I know that for some people, especially if you were on the left, it is pretty hard to go from giving a fuck what others say to not giving a fuck and starting to just speak for our people. And if it steps on some toes, so be it. For me, it was a lot easier because it was like a snap kind of thing back in 2012. And I've known Ramo for almost as long, you know, give or take a couple of years, but it's been damn near 10 years we've known each other. So, you know, I've changed somewhat since college, and that, who hasn't? But at the same time, what you were saying earlier, Marcus, it really hits home, because if all four of us were sort of left leaning in our early 20s and maybe our late teens, how much has the left failed us as the party that's supposed to represent minorities all across the board? That all of us bash liberals like a monkey. Maybe not all of us to the same extent, but it's like I'm on board with it, and I could tell some of you guys are in, you know, but it's like that's how much they've failed us, and that's what it comes down to. So I think to be a moderate is kind of the only way. I mean, yeah, there's going to be people more right and left leaning, but who is more balanced than a moderate?
Yeah. You know, the thing that really detracted me from the left, and I'm going to say it, is that certain people on the left side make it out as if us, you know, people of color are very helpless, and we live in like an extremely oppressive system, and there's no way for us to get up on top. And that's just the way life is. And I hate that. You know, it really makes me mad, actually. And that's not the way I want my child, whenever I have children, you know, to grow up to think. It's like self-loathing. That's not good. And really psychologically, it's very damaging for us, to our mind, and to younger generations as well. And that's what lost me, I think, was when they made it out to be like, here's where, you know, people of color are, and here's where, you know, white people are, and you're not going to get up to that point because of, you know, white supremacy or whatever. I'm like, no, like that's, I don't know, man. That's what lost me.
Which is already kind of bullshit in a way, because yes, it's a racist country, but then again, the East Asians have surpassed white people academically. They have a lower crime rate. They've got better education. And I'm not saying this to stereotype. This is just based strictly off the numbers. They are the most educated, most well-paid demographic, and they made it. So we can do the same thing. I mean, we've got a much higher climb because, you know, that's the system set up in place, but we're not.
Yeah, no, well, I think it was actually, I thought it was like they make the most money than any other family in the United States. Asian families do, you know, whites, blacks, you know, so-called Hispanics and natives included. So yeah, that was a very interesting statistic that I read recently. But yeah, man, I just don't like being told that I can't get to a certain level because of the system that we're in, or just things like that. I'm not a self-loathing person. I hate it. I think it's disastrous for movements. So yeah, that's, adding to your point, Crispin, like, just like coming together, focusing more on, and again, like even the culture itself, like, I think it was you and I that talked about this, Crispin, like you look at El Salvador and like those countries that practice machismo, you know, having patriarchy and the issue. I mean, this is for another video, but just like the direction that, certain countries and the cultures that how they want, like, I mean, what is it? I think Honduras is like one of the top countries where women are just like murdered or, killed off in large numbers. Like that's not a good direction to go for a culture itself. So that's why I believe that us as Native people must come together, because the culture that we're working in right now it's not working, essentially. It's not working for us. It hasn't and never will be, in my opinion. So we have to come together and look out again for one another, and, respecting men and women, people of, LGBTQ, just enough with, demonizing, certain, of genders and whatnot. So yeah, that's my thought on the culture, there. So again, it all comes to like, making change and looking out for one another, no matter like our political differences, how we see each other, and just moving forward from that point on. And yeah. Anyway, I guess I was going to add one more thing about like and this, I'll make this short, is the obstacles that we as like Native people and those from South America want to, that we face, is that those that want to like say that, we are like a Latino person or a Hispanic person and we should embrace that. I think that, and I meant to add this point much earlier, is that, majority of us are like indeed like Native people in appearance. So when we can come together and, because the purpose of, Hispanic and Latino and Mestizo all came from like European words, and a lot of them are meant for division. So if we say that we are Hispanic or Latino, it just takes away from saying that you're an Indigenous person. And again, it's someone that's saying that, you can't be Indigenous. You should say you're this because you have these certain other like, outside, blood, other strains of DNA from other people. So I see that more, and I'm not going to like name call, you know what I want to say, Wanchaloa, but
well, we might go more into that on Tuesday anyway.
Yeah, we'll go into that more on Tuesday, but just like, I'm just talking, I wanted to go back as far as like obstacles that we face, as far as like coming together and who stands in our way, what stands in our way. Again, but I digress. But I think it has been 2 hours. So I think we'll wrap this up unless anyone wants to say anything else. Are we all good? All right. Well, Ramo, right? Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Likewise, thank you guys for having me.
Oh, thank you. And Chris.
Definitely, you're most welcome back again.
Oh,
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And Crispin, thank you again. Thank you for introducing us to Ramo as well.
Yeah, that's good now.
It's always a pleasure. And Wanchaloa.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, out of this entire 2-hour conversation, really the most important takeaway is for the haters, we hate you too.
Yeah. That all being said, you got your important words in. We're going to tell you all good night, and we'll see each other again. Goodbye.
Oh, no.
Later.